it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today I am making a summer sunshine card using these gorgeous Spellbinders dies. Now please excuse the noise, there's these odd sort of banging noises that you might hear. It's actually the squirrels, and they are trying to basically come through my roof, so apologies if you hear that, but otherwise let's just get on with the crafting. So for this particular card I did draw it out, the idea that I wanted. So here's the sort of sketch that I took. Now I needed to do that so that I could work out what size card I wanted, and I wanted then to make an envelope that would fit. I had a little bit of leeway from the outside of the dies, so I sort of wanted to work out what envelope would fit but give me a good sort of border around my die cut part. So I started off by doing the envelope, which was 6 by 8, and I used this beautiful pattern cardstock, and I made this on my We Are Memory Keepers envelope maker. And I think using that pattern cardstock just added a little something to the card. It makes it really obvious it's not a bill for start with. So next we're going to be working on the card itself. And for this I used my easy peasy any size card base method, and I will link that in the blog post for you, so if you don't know how I do that, there's a whole video on that. Then I took the same pattern cardstock as the envelope and I created a mat to go on the front of this card, and that was 1/4 inch down in size from your card base. So don't forget, you can use any size card, you could go bigger or slightly smaller. That choice is completely yours. As to the look, you will have a bit of leeway because the dies are a little bit smaller than the finished card, so you could easily go down. So the next thing I did was emboss a piece of yellow cardstock, and I just took my regular platform rather than my magnetic platform. I popped my card inside this gorgeous Sue Wilson embossing folder, and then put the 2 plates either side and popped that through the machine to emboss it. And as you can see, it turned out absolutely gorgeous. I really liked how the depth of the embossing came out on this particular cardstock as well. This is Stampin' Up cardstock, and I just think it turned out really nice. I was really pleased with it. So the next thing was, this was a piece of A4 yellow cardstock from Stampin' Up, and I cut it in half, so I took the other half and then I took the dies, and I was just measuring to make sure that this die went to the right size for the more decorative die, so that I made sure I got the right size. And then I cut out the outer edge and then the inner edge. Again, I measured the inner edge to make sure it fitted on that whole die, because what we want to do is, as you can see here, I'm going to cut this other piece out, this decorative element out, and then it will go on top. But while I had these simple dies out, I also wanted to cut out that shape from the embossed piece. See how this all comes together in due course. Next, again, just using the simple label die here on some white cardstock. We're using the smaller one of the 2 that we used previously. We're creating an aperture into our white cardstock. Now I'm doing this first because I'm going to be cutting out the filigree element, as it were, but I thought it would be easier to do this first because of the way that this has been set up, that there is a slight sort of little border almost on the inside, and it's not an even border. The sides are kind of nothing there, but the 2 tops and bottoms of it have got this little border part, so I thought it'd be simpler to do that first. Now what you'll see is when I turned it over, I was very careful to make sure that the die cut didn't come out of the die, because I wanted to check, because it's such a detailed die, that it had gone through okay. It hadn't, so I just put a couple of bits of card to act as a shim, and that just gave a bit of extra pressure on those 2 elements, because the bits in the middle sometimes don't cut as well, just because there's not quite as much pressure, so you sometimes need to add that extra shim. So next I cut out from the white cardstock again this lovely border die, and it's just really pretty. All the names I'm putting up on the screen for for you, and where possible I will put links to the products on the blog post as well. But isn't that so pretty? The next thing I'm doing is stamping my sentiment, because I am still doing the die cutting element, but in order to die cut my sentiment out I need to stamp it first. So I decided to stamp it in this beautiful yellow to complement the cardstock, and then I've got this gorgeous curved matting basics set, and I just took one of those, so it's a nice simple clean die cut round our sentiment, and just pop that through, as you saw, at a slight angle just to stop the plates warping. If you want to know more details about that, I will put a link to the video about that I did on the blog post as well for you. So there's lots of things on the blog post for you to go and see, and to find that blog post just click on the link in the paragraph below the video if you're on YouTube. So that's all the elements all cut and ready to go. You saw the extra bit there was the ribbon, so we're all organised, we've got all the elements ready, so now it's just down to construction. Now with these detailed dies, I've tried all sorts of different sort of spray adhesives and things like that, and I've just never found them that effective. After a while they seem to sort of come unstuck. So what I tend to do is use a wet glue on a bit of scratch paper and then kind of literally just dip my die in. What you'll tend to find is that it will only put glue on the bits of paper. Occasionally you'll get a little bit that comes through, so all you need to do is just put a bit of kitchen towel across the top and just gently pat it, and it will absorb that excess glue for you. So that element was ready, so we popped him to one side to just dry off, and then we popped the patterned cardstock on the front of our card, and then also our lovely embossed piece centralized to the front of our card, both flat down, no popping up on these, they're all flat to the card base. So that looks really effective. So the next thing we did was take that strip die piece that we had, and we cut it literally straight down the middle. So we wanted to cut it in half, and this is just a little sneaky trick that I learnt from watching Sue Wilson, in fact, because where you maybe want the piece to be a bit longer and you know you're going to put something across the middle, you can cut it in half. Who's going to know that there's a big gap in the middle? So this is what I've done here, is I've created a look where, you know, it looks like it's much bigger and longer than it is. Now this piece here, the border part, is going to be popped up, but I'm just sort of positioning things, trying to make sure that I'm happy that it's going to work, because obviously you want to be sure that the gap is correct and that you've got, you know, enough space, etc., for your elements to all fit where you think they're going to fit. So the next thing I did was add glue gel to the back of the piece here. Now the pin flag glue gel is rather like silicone glue, but without all the stink, and it's just much nicer. But any kind of, you could use white foam if you wanted to, you know, foam pads, but I just thought this was nice and simple because of the shape, and some bits were thin and some were thicker, so I just thought this would be a lot simpler. And literally with this, you don't want to press too hard. You want to just feel it sort of touching down onto the card below, but other than that you don't want to press too hard. Now this particular strip die is designed to have your ribbon threaded through it, so you can see that I've done that here, and I've done it on both pieces. Now what I will say is that I did put a tiny bit of tape adhesive on the back of a couple of the middle sections of the die there, just to hold it in place, and then on the other side that's going to be stuck down, I'm using my glue gel again, and you'll have noticed that one end was pretty much flat and the other end had a big thicker amount of the glue gel, and that's because obviously one end is already sticking on the bit that's already popped up, and the other end is obviously going into the center that's dipped, so we need it to be upright, a bit more higher. That sounds really bad English, but you know what I mean. So we're getting the extra height, so we one end flat, one end with the height. So then what I realized was that the ribbon was a bit long. I knew it would be, but I wanted to be sure that once I put my sentiment, which is what's going in the middle there, that it would still cover the ends of the ribbon. Don't cut it so short that it doesn't cover the ends. You want that bit of ribbon to disappear underneath your sentiment. So then I took some little pearl sort of swirl things. They're kind of like a circle of pearls on a stick, and I cut the sticky part off mostly, but any kind of little pearly swirl things that you've got will work, or any sort of gem things like that will work. So what I did was, originally I had had a piece of foam in the center of my sentiment here, but what I found was it was just not sticking because there was some different layers. There was the stick, there was the ribbons. It just wasn't working. It was sitting really uncomfortably. It was sort of bits were up and other bits were down. So the advantage of having the glue gel here is that you will get it even across. Now what you'll see is at the moment the pearls are at the bottom, but when I put my flowers in, I was thinking it would be so much better if it was the other way up. Unfortunately my camera gave up, but basically I just twisted the sentiment round and stuck the flowers in the same way that I stuck that pearls down. So I apologise for that sort of cut in filming, but it really was what you saw how I did the pearl swirls, so it's the same principle. And then I just added a very small little blob of the glue gel, again really handy on this kind of area because I didn't want it onto the actual sentiment. It looks like it is, but it's actually just off the sentiment, and so having that glue gel really helps, and you don't have to do much sort of pressure, so it just sticks really well. So then the next thing I did was I took some pearls and put them in all four corners. I do actually have like individual pearls, but I had these little strips to hand because I knew I wanted to put them as I am here, like a little strip of 3 across the center there, and it's quite a lot simpler when they're already on that strip because you know they're going to be in a nice straight line. So I just used the other ones and just cut singles off, and the same here. I put 3 across the ones that were nearest the sentiment, and then I put a single one at the end of that there, and I just thought it just really added a nice sort of little finish to the card. It's just a little detail, but I think it just really finished it off nicely. And there it is. That is our card complete. So I hope you've enjoyed making this with me. I really enjoyed making it, so I hope you like it as much as I do. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please do take a look at the website. Our link, as I said, is below if you're on YouTube. Also, be ever so grateful if you haven't already to subscribe to the channel because it really does help. Thank you so much, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye.